Hello fellow Dragon Ball fans, how are all of you doing today? I'm the Swag Kage and welcome to another episode of Dragon Ballogy. Today on Dragon Ballogy, I'm going to be talking about censorship in Dragon Ball. And now, bear with me, this will involve more than just boobs, contrary to what the thumbnail implies. And that is because there's actually a lot of censorship across Dragon Ball. Like, a lot of censorship. And while I'm not the biggest fan of censorship, just in general, I do understand why some things had to be censored in Dragon Ball. Certain cultures have certain things that they just don't find acceptable, and Dragon Ball appeals to so many different people across the world. As a result, you end up with things like a German person seeing that Hitler is in Fusion Reborn, and you think, maybe it'd be best to cut that out. On the other hand, though, there are a lot of instances of really dumb bits of censorship, like changing the design of Bulma's underwear, for example. So, I mean, whatever. Let's just crack right into this and talk about a bunch of different instances of censorship across the franchise. Since children made up a large part of Dragon Ball's target audience when it migrated to the West, I think it's safe to say that getting rid of nudity and sexual content was a top priority for the various dubbing groups tasked with dubbing the show. Censoring all that raunchy stuff out of the original Dragon Ball must have been a chore for companies like BLT and Funimation because of just how much of it there was. Sexual jokes were everywhere throughout Dragon Ball, and while it wasn't too much of a problem in Dragon Ball Z, it was definitely a big part of the original Dragon Ball anime and manga. The Dragon Ball manga has a particularly bad problem with nudity because of the fact that you can see Bulma's boobs completely uncensored on 3 separate occasions. Once when Oolong is transformed into Bulma and talking to Master Roshi, once when Yamcha attempts to infiltrate Oolong's RV and steal the Dragon Balls when he sees Bulma showering through the window, and once during the Fortune Teller Baba arc when Krillin pulls down Bulma's dress from behind in order to get Master Roshi to nosebleed and expose the Invisible Man. All 3 of these instances are censored in Viz copies of the manga through some form or another. I think the most clever form of censorship out of these 3 is when Viz decided to give Bulma a bra in the Fortune Teller Baba arc when her boobs would otherwise be completely exposed to Roshi. The reason for this is because of the fact that it only makes sense for her to be wearing a bra underneath her strapless dress here, and when watching both the anime and reading the Japanese manga, I always find myself scratching my head thinking, why wasn't she wearing a bra? I don't know too many girls who go around in a strapless dress with no bra on out in public, especially when doing some of the things as dangerous and strenuous as Bulma is doing, and double especially when she is constantly around the biggest pervert on the planet. On the flip side, though, it's kind of weird for Roshi's nose to explode with more blood than I have in my entire body just at the sight of Bulma in a bra? So, logic's 50-50, but oh well. I still think it makes a little bit more sense than her just not wearing a bra at all. Nudity is present elsewhere in Dragon Ball, and while a lot of it isn't quite as heavy as seeing Bulma's boobs right in your face, Goku's penis is like everywhere in Dragon Ball. It's in the uncut manga, the Viz manga, and the uncut anime even, where they don't even show Bulma's boobs. Aside from that, you can see things like Goku's butt, Bulma's butt, Gohan's butt, and Vegeta's butt, all in uncut versions of the manga and anime, though broadcasted and dubbed versions of the anime tend to censor these out. While most of the time the censorship isn't too intrusive, some of the times it can be downright laughable or weird, like for example Vegeta's drawn-on pants from the 4Kids and Nicktoons version of Kai, or this example of Thailand censorship where they decided to blur out Gohan's chest when he transformed into a great ape for some reason. I believe it's a cultural thing, but even then, this is just bad. It doesn't look good. These 2 examples aren't a whole lot better, like the one I talked about earlier where Bulma's panties are redesigned. They're changed from white with pink polka dots to just a solid white color, and I don't see the point. What I think is that maybe it was supposed to make her panties resemble a bikini bottom for some reason, but wouldn't that just make it a replacement for underwear anyway? Whatever. And then this other example right here just looks bad. Now, I understand why they had to do this, because of the fact that they needed to keep the scene because it's sort of important, since in this scene, Bulma lures Oolong out by throwing her panties into the water on a fishing pole. The scene was necessary because of the fact that Oolong had just transformed into a fish to escape from the boat that Goku and Bulma were holding him on, and so they needed some way to get him back on the boat that was believable. So they changed it out for money to get rid of the sexual reference, but man, this looks atrocious. Now, I understand that maybe this edit is a bit passable because of the fact that since it was done for the sake of children, they might not notice just how weird it looks, but whew, that does not make this look any better. This still looks 110% awful. This little visual edit right here that I'm about to mention though, this takes the cake for most ridiculous bit of censorship throughout all of Dragon Ball, because this right here is, and I am not making this up, an edit of the scene I mentioned earlier where Krillin pulls down Bulma's dress and shows her boobs to Roshi, where instead of getting Roshi to nosebleed on the Invisible Man, Roshi hands Krillin a can of tomato soup and Krillin throws that tomato soup onto the Invisible Man. I'm not making that up. The editors use footage from a previous episode, edit it in, and make it look like Krillin is throwing tomato soup on the Invisible Man. That's about it for visual edits, but there are plenty more instances of censorship that aim to either change dialogue that references sex and nudity, or just completely cut scenes that reference sex and nudity. An example of the former is the scene where Bulma is talking to Goku about her boobs during her bubble bath, and in English versions of this scene, the dialogue is rewritten so that Goku is talking to Bulma about washing her back. A lot of scenes where Master Roshi asks to touch or see Bulma's boobs are also rewritten so that he is instead asking for much more innocent things, like, for example, taking Bulma for a walk on the beach.
I know we only planned on a moonlight stroll.
Or having Bulma hook him up on a date with one of her younger friends. That doesn't sound too much like the Master Roshi I know. I'm pretty sure he wants some ass, not a walk on the beach. As for scenes that were cut entirely, they include things like the scene where Master Roshi motorboats Android 18 in the back of a plane in Dragon Ball Z, the scene where Ronfon strips at the World Tournament, the scene where Videl slaps Roshi across the face for trying to touch her boobs. Pretty much just scenes with Master Roshi and them trying to get some ass again. Now, since I did promise at the beginning of the video that this would deal with more than just boobs and things of that nature, let's move on to things that aren't necessarily sexual and instead more just crude that were censored from the show. One example of this is when Goku was peeing in the beginning of the anime. Toonami decided to cut this scene entirely so you don't have to watch little Goku peeing in a pond. Another example was when Krillin farted on Bacterian's face during the World Tournament. This was changed to make it seem more like Krillin was just mooning him. Various instances of people being flipped off throughout the series are also censored at just pretty much every point. Bulma flipping Pilaf off is censored in the manga, Raccoon flipping Goku off is censored in the anime, Babidi flipping Goku off is censored in the Toonami broadcast, etc, etc. Also, needless to say, various swear words were cut from broadcasted versions of all 4 Dragon Ball series that include Dragon Ball Z, GT, and Kai. You know, words like
Damn it, let me piss.
That sort of thing were cut completely, replaced with lighter words like darn and all that. But funny enough, when any of Dragon Ball Z's movies aired on Nicktoons, they aired pretty much completely uncut. Things like swearing, blood, all of that stuff was still intact. There were a few exceptions though. For example, every scene with the Dictator in it is completely cut from the Nicktoons airing of Fusion Reborn, as is the scene where 13 punches Goku straight in the dick. These scenes weren't just cut from the Nicktoons airings of their respective movies, though. The Dictator was just cut entirely from German airings and hard copies of Fusion Reborn for obvious reasons, because he resembles Hitler and it might offend German fans. And the groin punch scene was just censored from tons of different airings of Super Android 13. The Toonami broadcast cut it out, Nicktoons cut it out, all sorts of different dubs of the movie cut it out completely. On the subject of characters getting punched in the dick, there's a lot of violence cut from Dragon Ball. Like a lot of violence cut from Dragon Ball. So much that there's no way I can cover it through this segment of this video right here alone. I mean, if you think I am exaggerating, just know that no, I'm not. So I'll start off small and just mention all of the instances where blood was cut. Pretty much every dub of Dragon Ball that aired the show in English removed blood. Like, all of it. And see, at first this doesn't seem so ridiculous because you go from this scene here where Bardock is covered, like, from head to toe in blood while he's confronting Frieza, which is admittedly a little graphic for children, to this lighter scene where Bardock is battle damaged, but not bleeding half to death. But see, there's a such thing as going too far, because in the scene where Goku gets pierced by Piccolo's special beam cannon, there's also no blood to be found in the 4Kids dub. As a matter of fact, they got rid of the hole in his chest and replaced it with a scar. Like, he gets pierced with this gigantic beam of death, and all he gets is a scar. Another example, the scene where Vegeta kills Goldo. You know, Gohan and Krillin are about to die, so Vegeta comes in, slices Goldo's head off. Goldo's head rolls across the floor, and then Vegeta talks to him, and then blasts his head into oblivion. In the 4Kids dub, this is changed so that Vegeta comes in, slices Goldo across the neck, and then the scene abruptly cuts to Vegeta blasting Goldo to death. That's not the worst of it though. In the Nicktoons and 4Kids airings of Dragon Ball Z Kai, when Cell kills Piccolo, the punch to Piccolo's cheek that breaks his neck is cut out completely. So when Cell charges forward and attacks Piccolo, there's this bright flash of light, and then it cuts to everybody's faces where they're all like, Then Cell walks over to Piccolo, picks him up, and the moment where he's supposed to blast Piccolo to death, he doesn't do that. He just throws Piccolo into the ocean. What's even worse, all references to death, gone. This isn't quite as bad in the Nicktoons version, because characters still have their halos intact when they're dead, so you don't have to worry about that. But in the 4Kids dub, right, they replace halos with these little golden orbs above the characters' heads. What? And even worse, they changed the name of the Gallic Gun to Gallic Blast, and the Spirit Bomb to Spirit Blast. I guess to get rid of the weapon references? If you're going to change Dragon Ball Z Kai this much, why would you even air it on your channel? This isn't even Dragon Ball anymore. Like, Blue Popo? Really? That's not even mentioning the non-censorship things that they've done, like when they said Piccolo was a Saiyan.
He can't beat Raditz on his own. That's when Goku's old enemy Piccolo shows up. Now Piccolo's a Saiyan just like Raditz.
The 4Kids broadcast is just like the worst when it comes to censorship though. I mean, like the Toonami broadcast, the Nicktoons broadcast even, the Saban dub, the Big Green dub even. None of them are this bad in terms of censorship. Quality of voice acting is one thing, but none of them do anything as stupid as turning the halos into little yellow orbs above the characters' heads when they are clearly dead, right? Now, they do, you know, the typical thing where instead of saying, "Oh, I killed you," a character will say, but I defeated you, or I sent him to another dimension. But again, it's not as bad as the 4Kids dub, where they will replace a farmer's shotgun blast with a laser shell or something stupid like that. But so, I could go into detail about every instance of censorship across every dub and broadcast of Dragon Ball that ever was, but I think that's not necessary. I think these few examples that I've given you guys here today probably given you a glimpse into just how bad censorship can be, not just for Dragon Ball, not even just for anime, not even just in the West, but just in general, like period. So, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode of Dragon Ballogy. If you have anything else you want me to talk about in a future episode, leave it in the comments below. If you have any questions about today's episode, leave it in the comments below. But for now, I'm going to bring this video to an end. So, I hope you all have a fantastic day. I will see you guys in the next video. And yeah, that's about it. Kage out.